we have a blood pump here, and this blood pump maintains the concentration gradient. It makes sure that the blood keeps moving through this dialyzer or through the dialysis machine at a higher pressure compared to the dialysis fluid, because when it's under high pressure it will be pushed outside, and this maintains the concentration gradient. This maintains that um, always urea will move from the selective permeable membrane out to the dialysis machine. Now, in order to carry out dialysis, it's always easier to connect the tube to the vein because it's closer to the surface and it's wider compared to the artery. But there's a problem because the vein is under low pressure compared to the artery. So always they make an operation before performing the dialysis, which is connecting the artery to the vein, and they call it shunt. So they add a shunt to allow the arterial blood to enter a vein and then to be withdrawn for dialysis. Now let's talk more about the dialysis fluid. We said the dialysis fluid is prepared. It depends on the concentration of different substances in the patient's plasma. So they will make a blood test and they will look at the concentrations of different substances in the plasma, for example, glucose, salts, the urea. Of course, we will find huge amount of urea because we need to get rid of it because of the kidney failure. So depending on the glucose concentration in the plasma, they will make a dialysis fluid either that contains high amounts of glucose or low amounts of glucose. If, for example, the patient has huge amounts of glucose exceeding the normal glucose level in the blood, so we need to get rid of this glucose, and so we need to add in the dialysis fluid low amounts of glucose. If, for example, the patient has low amounts of glucose, we need to put high concentration of glucose in the dialysis fluid to diffuse into the blood. So the glucose concentration, it depends on the patient. And there's an important thing I want to mention. In the past paper questions, they always ask you about the concentrations that you will find in the dialysis fluid. Now, urea, always, if we want to make a comparison between the patient's blood and the dialysis fluid, always the urea is going to decrease. The water, it might decrease or increase depending on the salt concentration of the patient. The glucose could increase or decrease, or it may stay the same. You will find another answer about the glucose. It remains the same if, for example, the patient has a normal glucose level, and I don't want this glucose to be lost from the blood to the dialysis fluid, so I will put in the dialysis fluid same concentration, so the glucose will diffuse in and out in the same level, equal, so it will remain the same, it won't change. So always remember that fresh dialysis fluid maintains a concentration gradient, and the glucose should not be removed by dialysis fluid. It should always remain the same.